God is at work in homeschooling families, and I always like to say that it's a literal walk of faith.
So I'll let you review really quickly what we've talked about, and then I'll let you jump onto the last two that we've got to talk about today.
Sure. So this is titled Heart Exam for Homeschool Dads. So we've taken the word heart, Heart, and we've made a point for each of those 5 letters. And we've contrasted it to the opposite attitude. Because when you're talking about the heart, it's typically what is your attitude about something. And we're looking at the spiritual condition of our hearts. So the H is to have a heart for God versus thinking that God doesn't even love us. The E is to enjoy the work and responsibilities of being a husband, father, and homeschooler, as opposed to viewing your responsibilities as a burden. The A was to adore your wife and kids versus not even liking these people. And now the R is to rely on God for the results, as opposed to thinking God's work is in vain. So I tell you what, a lot of people will refer to homeschooling as the homeschooling movement, because it really is a movement in so many ways, and there's so many spiritual components to it. God is at work in homeschooling families, and I always like to say that it's a literal walk of faith. My faith and Rachel's faith got stretched and challenged and grew so much during the 26 years that we homeschooled because we were forced to depend on God for the results. And there were so many times that we tend to try and take control and think that, okay, if we change this and make this adjustment and find the right curriculum and have the right schedule and are in the right co-op, that we will have control of what the results are going to be. And then we find out that that didn't work either. And then we start feeling like miserable failures, when all along, what we really need to be doing is to have an attitude that says, okay, God is in this. And this work that we're doing is not in vain. We will reap the rewards and the harvest if we persevere and don't give up in due time.
Yeah.
Well, we've finished 26 years of homeschooling. So when Rachel and I look back at the 26 years, there were plenty of days that just didn't go well. Plenty of weeks and months. We even had some years that, might as well just kind of throw that year away.
Yeah.
But we had some really good days, some really good weeks and months. And we had some years that we look back and said, you know what? That was a great year. We're encouraged. The kids are encouraged. Thank you, God, for that year. But the best way I would describe it is this. When you homeschool, God will fill in gaps that are so big, a school bus could drive right through them. I just love that what that pictures in people's minds. And when I think of all 7 of our kids and what God did in their lives via homeschooling, I'm reminded that everything that we're experiencing right now, the blessings of watching our kids mature and grow and succeed in their as they continue their education in colleges and as they start their careers in the workforce, that by God's grace, we got started on this journey. And by God's grace, He's filling in all those gaps. So I could give all kinds of examples. At least one that I'll give right now is with our oldest, because with our first, we're feeling like we're trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
And boy, we were trying to do a good job with the first one. And he wanted to go to the Air Force Academy. So as a good homeschool parent, we put him in Civil Air Patrol. We actually got to know the congressman in our area that would make that appointment. We made friends with other families whose kids had gotten appointments to the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy. And so we were getting our ducks in a row. We were getting everything lined up. Well, at the end of his junior year, he got invited to the Air Force Academy for a sports camp. And so you had to actually get invited to this camp. You couldn't just register and make it happen. So we're thinking, this is great. Leading to a senior year, this is going to be awesome. So he goes, and when he comes back, this gregarious tornado of a child with lots of energy is as subdued and quiet as he's ever been. And we're thinking, something's up. What's going on? So we have a meeting to start the school year, to have our first senior meeting. We're about to start our first senior year with our oldest kid. Okay, what's the game plan? Because here's the last check marks we need to do to get that appointment for you. And he says, Mom and Dad, I've been thinking about this, and the camp was really great. And I don't think God is calling me to the Air Force Academy anymore. Well, internally, we are panicked, and we are trying not to show that to him because we don't have plan B.
Right.
We literally were putting all of our eggs in this basket, knowing it was far from a gimme. And so now this son of ours, who really wasn't ready for college at that point, and had some minor learning challenges, we felt like we were about to fail our very first kid. So we went to visit some colleges, and I still remember the very first college we ever visited. I will not name it, and I never have named it because it was the worst college visit I've ever been on yet. And I thought, there's no way you're getting my kid. And you're even supposed to be a Christian college. It's like you didn't even know we were showing up that day. So we were very discouraged. The other visits didn't go much better. But around December, we went to visit this place that we had seen at a homeschool conference called Impact 360. And they have a gap year program. And so it was only in its fourth year, I think. So we go to visit down in the south of Atlanta. My son and I sit down, and we're kind of impressed with the surroundings. We're looking around, and I lean over to my son and I said, this place kind of reminds me of Chick-fil-A. So they begin, it just felt good. So they begin the introduction, say, welcome to Impact 360. This is a partnership with Union University in Tennessee and Chick-fil-A. And I was just like, okay, keep talking.
Did everyone say my pleasure when you asked a question?
Oh, yeah. Keep talking. This is sounding great. So that ended up being where my son went. So it was a fairly new program, like I say. They do a month-long mission trip. They do servant leadership training. They have visiting professors come in. And what happened is one of the professors from the King's College in New York City, he came and just connected with my son and said, you are the kind of student we're looking for at the King's College. So he helped my son with the application process to get the scholarships to make it happen. He worked as a TA for that professor. I didn't know about the King's College prior to this. I would have never made these connections, and my son wasn't ready. So that just having the year off to do this gap year, to prepare, and to meet this professor, there were gaps that God filled in that I had no hand in.
Yeah.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. Every one of my kids has some kind of experience like that. So I literally have a story for each one of my kids that is as dramatic as one would think. And even with my last son, I got better in terms of my walk of faith, but with my last son, I was thinking he was a little behind the timeline that I wanted him to be on. Like, son, we got to go visit some colleges. We're going to miss the window completely. And the last college we visited, they even said, you seem a little late in this process. And I didn't have a real good answer for that because we were. But it turns out that he got an athletic scholarship as well as an academic scholarship. And he's, several weeks into the fall semester right now and doing great. He's right where God would have him be. But this is a school that we had never even looked at before. But God brought them to my son, and they basically recruited him at the last minute. So
Wow.
All kinds of stories like that where God filled in the gaps that we had. And I love hearing other people's stories when you realize, yeah, God is at work in this. And if we'll rely on him and not think that everything we're doing is in vain, because it's not in vain,
Right.
but God is sovereign. He's got some control in this process too.
Homeschool Insights is sponsored by CTC Math. If you're looking for a great online math program, visit ctcmath.com and try it for free. For more great homeschool inspiration and resources, listen to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.